We look at Korea's main industries and foreign investor success stories to present Korea's outstanding investment environment. Explore potential opportunities to grow with Korea. With global renewable energy developers investing in Korea, the future looks bright for the domestic solar energy and offshore wind energy industries. Today, we'll meet a global renewable energy company, O션윈즈코리아, and listen to their successful investment story here in Korea. O션Winds is a company that specializes in offshore wind energy. I'm at its Korea office with Mr. Jean-Philippe Beautret-Brunet, Head of Development of O션Win즈코리아. Hello, sir.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Jean-Philippe.
Or call me just JP.
Oh, okay. But I like Jean-Philippe. Such a French-sounding name.
It is. From Paris.
Right. Okay, so I also like the company's name, OtionWinds. It's very breezy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And actually the brand was engineered looking into scientific studies, into what is the sound of wind at sea. And the sound that came out from the computer was retranscribed into OW. So that's why we started with OW, OtionWinds, as a brand name.
Right. Okay, tell us more about OtionWinds.
Well, OtionWinds, where to start?
Where to start? Let's start with the joint venture.
Okay, the joint venture was announced in 2018, so not long ago. We're still, let's say, a global startup, but global startup engineered by two major renewable developers and operators, one from Portugal and Spain, EDP and EDPR, and one from France, NG Group, alias in the past GDF. So those two companies were working a lot together. So one is French, one is Portuguese, by the way, and the ties built up along like about 15 years ago when they started together co-investing and co-developing offshore renewables and working along together, learning how to work together is very important, gapping the cultural difference, the different processes in big corporates. And along the way, basically both companies get closer and closer, and the team started to really somehow naturally mix together. So that's a natural story of both companies, or what we call them sponsors, of OW to come along together and to announce in 2018 this joint venture, or we call it more exclusive investment vehicle. So basically what EDPR was doing in offshore, what NG was doing in offshore, are directly migrated into OtionWinds that becomes this vehicle developing on behalf of both sponsors.
Right. So for people who are not quite familiar with what OtionWinds does, could you tell us a little bit about that?
So OtionWinds is a developer first and an operator of offshore wind. So we have two different technologies. One is a bottom fixed offshore wind. So bottom fixed offshore wind is basically the offshore wind that you can see a little bit everywhere when you look into turbines at sea, with a big monopile or jacket type fixed on the seabed. In order to do that, you need to have proper depth, so it should not be too deep, up to 40 meters under sea level. And those are fixed turbines, so we call them bottom fixed. The bottom of the sea, and the turbine is fixed by the foundation. Okay, this is the most actually globally developed technology because it started back in the early 90s in Europe, and the most commercially viable or economically viable one. And then you have another technology called floating offshore wind.
It's floating?
So this is the one that you see here on this picture. So here is more, you're not anymore fixed on the bottom. Of course, you have some mooring lines that grabs the sea floor. And then you have a floater that goes around following the waves and the currents and aligning directly with the wind as well. And those technologies were developed back in 2007 with EDPR and also NG at the time as a pioneer of floating offshore. And floating offshore is more pre-commercial stage right now. So you have less projects. It's more, I would say, more complex to develop.
So a lot of research has to go in.
So a lot of research went into it, and now we are more into. We came in Korea actually to scale it to a very large commercial scale in order to export as well, and serve global markets and that. So floating offshore has two. Just to explain about big difference. Floating offshore, I told you that bottom fix. Wind has to be around 40 meters depth to be optimized or less. When it goes above 40 meters, then you start thinking of adapting a floating structure because the depth is too deep. So you need to adapt. And we've seen globally that most of the good winds out of the northern European Sea are basically in very deep area. So each of the countries, in order to have a large scale offshore wind park or offshore wind energy for any countries, it's then going to be floating offshore wind for the best selection. Okay. Did you got it?
I think so. I've seen this before somehow.
You've seen this?
So yeah.
Yeah. This one is in Portugal.
Yeah.
That's the first semi-submersible project that we started in 2007 on the development, on the research side, as you mentioned. In 2011, we started to commission a prototype. So we fabricated one floater and we adapted one turbine to it with various partners. Of course, we were not alone. We had Vestas coming in, well, NG, Repsol was there. So a consortium of companies to test during 5 years at sea one single prototype.
One single prototype.
And decommission it and see how it reacts to typhoons, high waves. We sustained, I think it was up to 18 meters, 17 meters waves, and the floater did not react very well.
So passed the test.
It passed the test. Then we decommissioned it in 2017, and we started a real project with 3 turbines that were. So the first one was 80 meters. In the real project, we jumped to 164. So we doubled the size, meaning that you need to double the size of the floater as well. So you have a lot of fabrication issues. And then we now operating a 25 megawatt of Portugal coast. That was the pre-commercial project.
Okay. I think I know a little bit of what you're talking about. I know that it generates clean energy.
Yes,
and it's the energy for the future. I know that much, right? And I also know that Ocean Winds is working on a worldwide 4 gigawatt scale project and is also trying to expand the business influence here in Korea, so locally, right?
Yes.
So I guess my question is, like, why did you come to Korea? Why did you decide to expand and enter the Korean market? What's in it for Ocean Winds?
That's a very good question. That's a very simple one, but the question, the answer is going to be a little bit longer. No, it's the result of a process. So let me first correct just one little figure. For ocean winds globally, we are developing, as far as I know, 6.6 gigawatts. So not 4.
Okay.
So it's more projects.
Okay.
Right. We have the UK, we have France, the Iberia Peninsula, including Portugal, Poland, and the US, and Korea.
And Korea.
So when we jump into Korea, the question was this. At the beginning, ocean winds is really centered in the Western world,
So
right?
Europe and the Americas, right?
Exactly. And at the time, a lot of discussions back in 2018, a lot of discussions about getting into Asia, because Asia, due to the population, has a very large demand on energy, right? And where in Asia? Asia is very big. Where would you go? So we started looking into what we call the fundamentals of each of the countries. In those fundamentals, what the investor does at all time before entering a market is to look into the GDP, all the economical.
The facts and figures, the numbers,
Exactly.
the statistics.
Statistics, looking into the population growth, looking into the type of industries, whether they are energivores or not, and looking also into so geopolitics and geography. Okay, so everything, economy, sociology, geography, geopolitics, right? And then it comes out that Korea was on the top. So Korea has a lot of import of primary energy,
Right.
consumes a lot of energy,
Ooh, yes.
has energivore industries such as semiconductors,
Yeah, we have a lot of those.
a very high consumption on any type of goods, a very good economy, stable government, high education rate.
Yes, I can vouch for that.
Right? And well, at the end, it operates a little bit like an island because of geopolitically speaking, North Korea, right? So it's more like an island. So as an island, it's not linked to other grids and electricity grid or to other ways, to other means to simply like we do in Europe, or like it's the case also in the US, Canada, to exchange electricity or gas easily. So the fundamentals are there, and we then started to look into what are the type of resources in terms of wind, because we're doing wind here. So you need wind blowing, right? and we looked into two. So you have wind, a lot of wind in the peninsula, mostly in the south,
Right.
southeast, southwest, and full south. With Jeju-do having all the peaks, right? But then you need to look into the load demand. What we call the load demand are the electricity demand that is generated by the population. And so, well, in Korea, the first load center is Seoul, Gyeonggi, Incheon.
Yes.
And then the other one is Ulsan, Busan, Daegu,
Down south.
right? So those are the load centers. And then we starting seeing whether each of the load center would apply the same technology back into the two different technologies that Ocean Winds develops, right? So bottom fixed versus floating. And the first project that popped up to us was a floating project in Ulsan, known as Korea Floating Wind, KF Wind, that we co-invested together with a Norwegian company called Aker offshore wind, previously Aker Solutions, and now developing. So that was the story to enter the Korean market, from the fundamentals to where to start. Ulsan has its own fundamentals. It's a shipbuilding
it's heavy
cluster.
industry, yeah.
Exactly. So in order to scale floater fabrication, it was absolutely perfect.
Yeah, so where else, right?
Exactly, and those are the biggest yards in the world,
Right.
and when we started with Busan and started building up the team and working on the project, then we started looking into the other load center, which is Incheon, and see whether it would be possible to develop a bottom fixed project, because there the depth, I don't know how to say it in English, but you have the Keppol,
Keppol.
right? The sand banks. So on the west side of Korea, you have a lot of sand banks, and those muddy sands aggregates together and build up a very soft and muddy layer of mud and sands together, and so it's not easy for adapting bottom fixed technologies there. But we find out that it would be actually quite suitable to have a project off Incheon, but far from the shore, so about 90 kilometers. And by the way, Ulsan is also 80 kilometers from the shore.
So it's kind of like you benefit from the fundamentals, as you say it,
Yes.
and also it has its challenges, right? Coming
course.
to Korea.
Of course, you have challenges that renewable industry in Korea is quite, it's very well developed in terms of foundations, but still lacking track records. So that's also, in terms of challenge, something that we're addressing is to support the maturing of the supply chain. So all the, what we call local contents, to be with us and to benefit from our investments as to building their track records, getting up to standards in order to export in other projects around the world later.
You talked about the fundamentals a lot, about having the demand for renewable energy and the strong support of the government. So I'm going to ask you a question on that, because not only is the economy stable and the political situation stable, the government is really pushing for the renewable energy sector. It's actually part of the Korean New Deal policy, which I'm sure you're well aware of, right? So how have these government policies affected your business?
Well, in order to see how it impacted us, it's good to know what it was before.
Okay, that's a good place to start.
So in 2018, when we started screening the fundamentals and started looking into the market, I would say it was a bit like a Far West. A Far West with cowboys and so on. So renewables, no rules at sea. You can apply for what we call an OPPW, so it's occupation and use permit of public waters, right? So basically it gives you a piece of sea where you can develop a project. And everybody was trying to get their hands on a piece of sea.
So it's kind of like no rules.
It's kind of real estate,
Okay.
right? So we can do offshore. I don't know how to do offshore wind, but I will get the piece. I will get my piece, and then I will sell it. I will sell it to someone that wants to do offshore wind, right? So it was the Far West of real estate, like super big bubble, everybody running gold rush to at sea or to public offices to get their permit and so on. And it ended up with, if you looked at the map of Korea at that time, and would just draw the pieces of seas that have been taken to potentially develop a wind offshore project, then you could not see the sea around Korea anymore.
Oh my God.
Exactly. But today you don't see those many wind farms around because it is not developed.
Right.
Because it is either not suitable, because it was too much toward short-term profitability, where renewable energy is more long-term driven.
Right.
And then President Moon, or Moon administration, started to say stop. We want to, or the way that we got it is stop. Let's regulate there, and let's assign 5 key areas for the development of offshore floating wind. Offshore wind. Floating. Floating is in Ulsan.
Yes.
What the administration has done well is that by basically naming those areas of interest, then it has focused from both local developers and investors into the same areas, right? So that was the first impact. The second impact is really at an investor point, is to give confidence to the investor. For example, we were doing Ulsan at that time, but Ulsan lacked a bit of consensus. And the Korea Green New Deal actually gave a lot of confidence toward Ulsan. Okay, 6 gigawatt of project in Ulsan. This is part of the policy. Korea needs it, and this is going to happen, right? And then we started as an investor to look into, okay, if the policy names directly the area, we need to support that policy to understand how much we're going to contribute to the economy, how much we're going to contribute to the society. So we're doing socio-economical impact study with the university, so Ulsan National Institute of Science and Technology, UNIST, and some other local partners. And for example, we know already that our project is going to reduce 48,000 tons of microdust particles into the air. Just that project.
Wow.
So it means that you have 5 other projects.
Wow.
So it's going to be huge in making misemonji or fine dust, right?
Yeah.
Dropping in this area.
Oh, that's good news.
So this is how much clean energy can be clean, makes your air cleaner. And then another thing that we see that the policy is supporting is Korea in its fundamentals really want to achieve a hydrogen economy.
Right.
But in order to achieve a hydrogen economy, you need to scale it up. You need to have access to water and electricity. And the first step to make this hydrogen economy, because many of the technology exists, but only for small scale, so I would say under 80 megawatt. So we're going to see first this decade succeeding into floating offshore wind, and most probably right after 2030 to have those technologies adapted to the massive production of hydrogen. So it's still far away. We are in 2021, almost 20.
On it.
But we're working on it. So you can see how the policy sustain confidence of the investor, deeper engagement into the local development of the project, and from that project, forcing in 1 decade what Korea is demanding, which is a hydrogen economy, and to see how this is going to contribute to that, right? So
it's a very positive impact the policies
it
have
is
on ocean winds.
Yes.
That's great. That's great to hear. You've actually talked a little bit about this, about the ESG component of your business.
Okay.
Can you tell us a little bit more besides the joint project with UNIST?
ESG.
It's a word that everybody seems to be talking about, right?
ESG is for us. It's an important buzzword that basically encompasses already existing standards. The ITF, the ETF, so everything about corporate social responsibilities and etc. etc. But frame it, so ESG frames things that we do already in other geographies, in other projects, so we are used to. But like reshaping those standards into a more practical way for companies and to invest in a responsible manner. So we are, sorry, studying that right now. We are studying what level of standard should be used into the ESG. So starting with the environment impact assessment, up to socio-economical impact, sustainable investment, etc., etc. So
do you have
now,
any projects that you're particularly working on?
well, all of the projects that we're developing in Korea are going to go through ESG.
Okay.
Yes or yes. The thing is that due to the size of those projects and the time frame that they're associated with, it's going to take us for a good ESG about 2 to 2.5 years to work on that. We have a team working on it right now. And we are we launched already the environment impact assessment for Ulsan and are basically doing a consulting or a study around how the ESG is going to go on top of the environmental impact assessment. So yes, ESG is going to be here for quite a long time.
It's very important.
It is.
Theme.
Environment is important.
Renewable energy.
Renewable energy, but you have, we always say renewables are clean energy, right? But it's not really that renewables are clean energy. It really depends how you develop the project. If it is developed in a very environmental manner, socially equal manner, or benefiting manner, and build up developed from the development linked to what we call operation and maintenance, which is after installation, after construction, if you want. Then you start looking into a very long time ESG standard. So it's not something that I will just use through up for getting a project finance with a bank or getting a permit from the government.
Yeah. Marketing strategy, it's here to stay,
right? It's here to stay. And so you need to adapt it to the project, and you need to make sure that the project is going to be able to follow those ESG rules along the time of operation, which is set to 30.
I think that's the right approach. That's good, that's good. Okay, we talked a lot about business and floating devices and whatnot, but I want to talk a little bit more about you and your life here. Okay, so you've been in Korea for quite some time, right?
Yeah, for a bit, yes. About 12 years altogether, because I was in and out all the time.
Right. So
between Paris, Lisbon, and Seoul.
Ooh, you're well-traveled.
I could make fashion brands. Like this.
Maybe for your next venture.
Yes.
Renewable, clean fashion, something like that. What do you like most about living in Korea?
Well, for me, it's home. I like very much the society. When I came here, for me, the first time was it was in 2002.
2002.
So
Ooh, World Cup.
Almost before, just before. So it was about 20 years. Next year. Well, number one, I like the culture very much.
What about the people?
I like the people, I like the culture, I like the food very much. Well, for foreigners to come here, they need to eat spicy, then they will like it. Korea is also compared to Europe, where I come from, Portugal and France. Portugal and France, as many Korean knows, are very functional, but are very old economies, very well sitting onto their 200, 300, 400 years built up systems. Sometimes those systems contradict each others, and it makes the society slower. Why I'm saying that is because the first time I came to Korea, and even now, Korea has been built on a very functional model, very fast delivering, service-oriented society. So for someone coming from Europe or from the US, wow, Korea is super cool because it's very convenient.
Right.
Wherever you live in a small country, you can do whatever. You don't need to wait. Oh, I have a problem with my Wi-Fi at home. In Portugal, I would wait for 1 week.
Yeah, here 5 minutes.
I would say 30 minutes. The time for the guy to come and to change it. But this type of things, I mean, Korea is very well structured.
Right.
Society. The people are very nice, very friendly. There is no aggressivity, or very few. Delinquents and I don't know, crime and not so much.
I feel like people are more responsible, I guess.
Yeah, they're more. Yeah. So this is a very good place to live in.
Right. So on top of that, this is a question that we ask all of our interviewees. So you talked a lot about Korea, doing business here in Korea and living in Korea. So based on your successful business model here in Korea, what advice would you give to potential foreign investors looking to coming to Korea?
Okay, foreign investors in my area, in energy area, for example, or in general.
In general, I guess.
General?
Yeah.
Well, number one, before coming, study your market.
That's important. The fundamentals.
The fundamentals. Number two, look into those fundamentals. Look into potential partners to develop your business, because Korea is very network oriented, and as being a foreign investor, when you come in, you don't have a suitable network to develop that business. It could be an agency, it could be another company doing the same type of business, but with different technology, whatever. And then get in touch with Kotra if you have that in your country, because Kotra for us has been a very strong help. Understanding how to secure, how to start the team, make the first employment contracts, set up the taxation. Look into offices. Kotra is very well. I mean, Kotra is, for those that don't know, is the Korea Trade Agency. It's an agency under the Ministry of Trade and Energy, and it has been, I don't know, I think 30 years. Has been operating for more than 30 years, and has a team dedicated to support foreign investors when they enter the market.
So when you first came here, you got a lot of help from Kotra?
Yeah, well, I also used to work for Kotra myself.
So there you go.
Back in the Y. In 2004, we've done a couple of things together. But it's a very good agency.
Right, so in order to take your first step, it aids you where to take your first step, how to take your first step when you're setting up.
Because usually the investor is like, oh, I see the market, I see the fundamentals, I want to go there. What should I do?
Yeah.
In terms of ideas and decisions, okay. In terms of daily task, you need to break it down and to know exactly where you're going and if you're doing things properly.
So get in touch with the right people, I guess would be your advice. That's great advice. Thank you. Okay. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Look at the time. Wow.
Wow, already?
I know. It's been such a pleasure.
It was a pleasure too.
Okay, that was Mr. Jean-Philippe Baudry-Brunet, Head of Development of OceanWinds FDI Focus Korea will be back with more information for foreigners who are hoping to invest in Korea. We wish you all the success here in Korea, and until next time, goodbye and good luck.